Hey, we're back. Did you miss us? We were only going like 10 minutes. So we're back with the Prophet of Zod, Gret Gyler debate after show. Unfortunately, Zod can't join us. He has other things he has to attend to, but Gret's here. And they had a debate on basically how would the existence or non-existence of God affect morality. I'm going to give my little 2-minute spiel on what I thought of the debate. And I do think that both people did very well. I mean, very, very formal, professional type talking points, and I think they were very well informed. But the only thing that I really didn't quite get was if the topic is how would the existence of non-existence of God be affect morality, then the question should be, hypothetically, let's assume God does not exist, and then go from there, and then let's assume that God does exist and go from there. And I think Zod started this, but I don't think that they got very far on it. So my question to Gret is, it's similar to what Zod was asking, but if God ceased to exist right now, boom, he didn't exist anymore, would we notice any change of morality in our society? Would we notice the difference? Would we see any change? Would people be running out and doing anything different than they are today?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that there's two ways it could be different. The first one is on some kind of deeper metaphysical level that we don't quite understand. I think that it might be that things are more meaningful with a God. But then the other question is, would it change the behavior of society if everyone acted like God didn't exist? And I think that's an interesting question, but not quite what I was. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't talking about that in the debate. And I haven't thought. I don't have a lot to articulate in that regard.
Well, the reason I ask it is because if the question is how would the existence or non-existence of God affect morality, then when we have to actually make the assumption, is there effect that God has on morality? Now, you can start talking about divine command theory, which the way I interpret the divine command theory only says that what is moral is but what God deems to be moral, which actually begs the question, and I'm using the term loosely there because it doesn't really mean begs the question, but colloquially beg the question. Doesn't that make it in mind dependent on what God deems as moral, and therefore it's subjective and not objective morality? Now, I know that goes to the Euphothrow dilemma as well, but I think that the whole thing is, if God doesn't exist, then the effect of morality would be nil, because if it doesn't change what we do day to day, if we don't have any change in the society, if God vanished, supposing if he could, then the effect of the non-existence of God and morality is that there is no effect God has on morality.
Right, but that's under the assumption that the day-to-day is all that there is.
What do you mean?
Like things like heaven and hell and eternity and some kind of spiritual realm, we're ruling out those, assuming that those things are completely out of the question. Yeah, maybe the day-to-day might not perceptibly change. But if those other things exist, then
right?
Sorry, say that again.
You mean like towards the salvational things?
Yeah, I mean that would be one element.
But that's not morality, though. We're talking about morality, and that's when we talk about morality, we're talking about the ethics and things that we do in our daily lives, how we
right. But what I'm saying is we'll take the Christian perspective, which is not just as an example. I'm not trying to defend Christian morality in particular, but as an example, so a Christian, if God exists and there is some kind of spiritual realm beyond just the day-to-day physical realm that you and I currently perceive, if that exists, then our day-to-day actions are actually more meaningful than what is perceptible right in front of us.
Right, and of course, there's obviously metaphysical ramifications if God doesn't exist, but I just don't see an effect if God didn't exist. It would change anything the way we notice. And I think Zom made a good point that I don't know, and I'm willing to have argumentation on, but I don't know if God, if he exists, has done a very effective job of communicating what his perceptions of morals should be. There's so much vagueness when it comes to what we think is moral, and it does vary from society to society. I mean, you can say that you accept moral objective morality, but there's still descriptive moral relativism that is a fact. I mean, morals do change between societies. We know there's cultural factors that are factored in when it comes to objective morality. Now, you want to argue that objective morality can only exist if there's a deity, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. There are books out there, like Sam Harris argues, if I'm not mistaken, objective morality can exist without a deity. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I'm familiar with his argumentation.
I, I, I,
He starts with the base level of all human suffering is the worst possible evil. If maximal human suffering is like is what we would consider bad, and then and then we can build a morality from there. But that is I don't believe that that's. I mean, that's an objective moral framework, but I don't think that I think that's changing the definition of morality.
and that's fair enough. And you're right. It starts like that, and then it goes to harms and benefits to society, to individual.
Yeah, and I think you can build out a logical framework based on that, which we can all pretend is a good thing. We can all say, "Hey guys, this is good, right? Yeah, it's good." But I don't actually think that there's anything inherently good about it, because good wouldn't exist in that universe.
Okay. And my second question is, before I turn it over, I know E has a lot he wants to add to this. I think. How do we know what's actually moral? Let's say you do ground morality with a deity. I mean, that's the whole point of having objective morality, being grounded. What makes it objective, and you would posit a deity. Now, I do think there's other ways of grounding it. Ideal observer theory is one way, if I'm not mistaken, to ground objective morality without a deity. But how do we actually know that these are the actual moral laws that God has given to us?
Well, we might
How do
not know it. Yeah, we might not know it. I think that's
Okay.
it's a good question, and it might be something that is. I mean, the way the universe could be set up is a God exists, and He has imbued morals with it, and we're completely clueless to it.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what's happened, or that would be a pleasant world to live in. I'm just saying that that question has no bearing on my assertion. That's all.
All right, fair enough. The consequences of that, because again, the topic of how would the existence or non-existence of God affect morality, I think deals with a lot with consequences or consequentialism. So the consequences I see from that is that if that was the case, then it makes no difference to us whether God exists or not, because we have really no way of knowing what the moral code is. If God does have objective morality, well, hang on. So if God does have objective morality and He can articulate it to us in a way that we can know what that moral framework is, then to us, it really makes no difference. It's like having a bunch of laws and then say, okay, you need to abide by these laws. We're not going to give it to you. And then you're just kind of feeling away in the dark in a society that doesn't have a codification of what these laws are.
Yeah, I think it's a separate question. I think that, like, how do we interpret morality? How do we understand how it works or how it exists? That's a separate question from whether or not it exists.
Sure, absolutely, yes, of course. But the point
I'm
is,
happy to talk about those things, but that's separate from what I've been talking about on YouTube.
Yeah, that's true, but I'm just going by the topic of the actual debate, which was how would the existence or non-existence of God affect morality. Now, you could argue, sure, if God exists or doesn't exist, morality may change or may not change. But I think, though, the bigger question is, how does it affect us? And I don't see how it affects us. If we don't know what the actual morals should be, then Him existing or not existing doesn't change anything with respect to our understanding of the objective morality framework that He has, or what He has for divine command theory. Sure, you can argue that what God says is moral, therefore it's moral, but we have no idea what the hell He's saying. Does that kind of make sense?
I understand. Yeah, I understand the logic behind your argument, and I think it's kind of a separate issue. Like, whether or not we can interpret it, what the implications it has, is a separate issue than whether or not it exists. And the point I've been trying to make is, so we can talk about whether or not this is where it gets sticky, because I don't believe objective morality can exist in a universe without a God. So if people are, and several people on this chat want to put forward the notion that God doesn't exist, I think it necessarily follows that objective morality doesn't exist. And if objective morality doesn't exist, we can talk about a whole host of things. But that is first we have to agree on that first presupposition, and then we can have a huge debate about what the steps are after that. But we can't even come to agreement on that one statement, and because we're not coming to agreement on it, we're talking past each other when we get to the next stage.
Oh, I think you make a valid point on that, and I kind of side away from a lot of the atheist agnostic group on that. There are a lot of atheists that do think objective morality can exist. And I think it can exist. I don't have a problem with objective morality existing. I see though what happening, and you touched on this, which I don't know was relevant to the actual topic, but you touched on tribalism, and I kind of see a lot of atheists latch on to this notion that objective morality is a bad thing, and objective morality exists, therefore God exists, and it doesn't have to work that way. You're arguing that. Don't get me wrong. That's an assertion, but I don't see any evidence that if objective morality exists, God has to exist. And I don't think objective morality needs to be necessarily a negative thing for atheists. Matter of fact, if an atheist wants to argue objective morality does exist, it doesn't have any relevance to his belief that God exists or does not exist, or if God exists or not. I think that people relate these things too much with each other.
Sure, and I think that those are worthwhile debates or conversations to have. And the point that I've been trying to harp on, well, what I've been trying to do is isolate each individual point so we can tackle them independently of the others, right? So just because, like, something that's so common that I've seen, I mean, that atheists have done, especially when they comment on my videos, is they talk about the atrocities committed in the Old Testament, and they say God is immoral. But it's like, hold on a second, like, there are to make the statement that God is immoral, there are so many things that underlie that accusation that, like, we need to address the whole host of things first. And if we don't agree on this foundational stuff, there's no way we can have a coherent conversation on the morality or immorality of the God of the Old Testament.
Yeah, and that's a different topic altogether. That could be a whole different debate. Matter of fact, we are having a debate like that with somebody that's actually here right now. Emperor Atheist will be having a debate of similar nature on that with Max Hangs Out on the 18th.
Yeah, but that's my point. It is a different debate, but they all get lumped, they all get conflated together. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. I'm trying to have like can we agree on first principles, and then we can go from there. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, I will agree with your, and I'm going to turn this over to EA in a second here, if you guys don't mind. I do agree with your definition of objective morality. That's what I generally go by too. To me, objective morality, or it just basically means mind independent.
Well, someday you and I should do a conversation on objective morality. I think since we actually agree on the premises.
Well, somebody once told me, and I love this, and I don't remember who it was, so please forgive me, but they had told me, unless you have a PhD or working on a PhD, ignore the terms subjective and objective altogether, because you're going to get it wrong. There's a lot of things involved in these terms, and they can be used different ways. And I agree, going into a conversation, you do need to narrow it down. And I would go by objective means mind independent. I think that's a simple, easy way to work with that term. Yes, and I think a lot of people do agree with that. Okay, but Emperor Atheist, you've been chomping at the bit. By the way,
yeah,
I do want to promote that your debate coming up with Max Hangs Out. It's going to be on. Let me get this right. Is slavery, according to the Bible, moral, or is biblical slavery moral or immoral? Something along those lines.
And something about God being omnibenevolent. So it's something in that, something that he picked. It was cool. It was not a big deal. That's basically what that's going to be about. Yeah, Gret, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, it was a nice debate you had with Zod. And I try not to be biased. Yeah, I watched the whole debate. And I try not to be biased towards atheists or agnostics or anybody. But it's one thing that, and I am one atheist who accepts objective morality. Not necessarily on the same quims that Sam Harris may, but it's one thing I wanted to say that you didn't do, and what no apologists ever do. Because you basically are using a moral argument for God. You said if God exists, then objective morality exists. Second premise, third premise, then if objective morality, then therefore God exists. This is basically your proposition, right?
No.
What is your proposition?
I've denounced that so many times. I'm not even trying to talk about the existence of God. I'm simply talking about the singular assertion. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say this, but literally, I've probably said it online like 100 times. The only thing I've talked about is objective morality can only exist in a universe with a higher being. I don't even want to get.
I gotta say, you have clarified that many times, and I don't want to see you straw man. And that's what I've been said before, is that your argument is that objective morality can only exist if God exists. That's it. That's
basically what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you are using the moral argument that most apologists use, then, right?
I mean,
because you mentioned divine command theory. That's why I say you mentioned a particular philosophical argument for a deity.
Yeah, so when divine command theory came up in the debate, it was because he asked me a question about how morality could exist in a universe with a God, and I said I'm not qualified to talk about this, but one thing that people talk about is divine command theory. So that's not part of the thing I'm talking about. Yeah.
So you don't necessarily okay, I get you. Because you don't necessarily promote divine command theory then.
No, not necessarily. I don't promote hardly anything. I'm mostly just this idea of like objective morality is something I think about a lot. I mean, I'm thinking about it for like over 10 years. I remember like having debates about it when I was like in high school. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, yeah, you seem like a very logical person. I like that. Well, let me ask you this. Just to throw just forget about divine command theory, because the only thing I wanted to say about divine command theory, and I was out here because I got some things to do, but I just wanted to touch on this. There are many other meta-ethical theories that atheists and agnostics can use besides divine command theory that are basically fall up under the umbrella of objective morality. I just wanted to make that point. I mean, you have many others. Ideal observed theory. I don't know if you're familiar with these things. Consequentialism, naturalism, moral non-naturalism. I mean, all of these meta-ethical theories do not need a particular deity. And these are basically meta-ethical theories that can be used and accepted by atheists. And I really wish a lot of more atheists would accept them. And because I'm not really on the side of saying, well, that morality is subjective, because I think all of us sitting here now just using our brains, we would say that if somebody's getting raped, regardless of that victim saying, well, it was my fault, or I shouldn't have dressed like that, I think all of us would say objectively that rape is wrong. So I think objective morality does exist. But the thing I get a lot of Christians, Christians make the mistake, and a lot of apologists make the mistake, is that a lot of them do use divine command theory. Well, because divine command theory is the only way you can actually make such a claim according to these philosophical arguments that a deity exists. But this is the thing, Gret, I didn't see you ontologically in this debate. You didn't ontologically tie this deity in with moral values. Even if it is a deity, even if he was to just, for the sake of argument, say there was a God, there was a creator, it may be a deist creator. Just like Steve said, how can you ontologically tie this particular deity into morality? How can you do that?
That was awesome. Yeah, that was extremely well said.
Yeah. So okay, I want to first touch on this is again. I think that was well said. I appreciate the concession that you kind of see where I'm coming from a little bit better. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand you.
Okay. The other thing I want to say is you put forward a few other objective moral frameworks like naturalism and so forth, and I think I agree that there are objective moral frameworks, but I disagree that there is anything truly meaningful about them, and that they're not like systems that are built into the fabric, woven into the fabric of the universe, and they're ultimately just subjective. Like they're objective in the sense that they're a fixed set of rules that people can come together and agree on, but they're still subject. You still have to subjectively choose to follow those frameworks. And so the definition I'm using of objective morality, so some people have told me it would be helpful if I use the phrase ultimate morality or whatever. It's just like I'm never going to win when I pick any term. So, but the definition I use for objective morality would not, you would not include the moral frameworks that you mentioned in that. So I can sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Gret.
Well, no, I was going to say I'm going to let you respond to that so we can. If you have
all of the frameworks, and I would be glad to see these links. I mean, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and any type of philosophy institution. For the only way you could actually just wave them off, Gret, you would have to show that these these particular ideas of morality are no good, and no one has ever done that for centuries. I mean, philosophy. I mean,
lots of people. I think lots of people have done it. The thing is that when you say that they're no good, it's easy to do that because none of them have any ground to stand on apart from what
I understand you saying that, but so basically what you're saying, you're telling me that the rest of these meta-ethical theories are no good, but basically you're holding to the divine command.
Depends on what you mean by no good.
Can I interject real quick? I don't think there's one specific meta-ethical theory that doesn't have some kind of issue.
Exactly.
I don't think there's a perfect one out there. Now, I kind of tend to go moral universalism, and I do like ideal reserve theory. Have no idea if it's right or wrong. I couldn't even venture a guess, but it appeals to me, right? It appeals to me. But every one of them does have.
Sorry, go ahead.
Even
that could be a debate. That could be a debate all in and of itself. But I just wanted to make this point because I don't want to keep going back and forth about because you have to show that these meta-ethical theories are no good, and no one has done that. But I will say this.
I don't agree with that. I think that every single one of them, you're saying that no one has shown that they're no good, and at the same time, Steve is saying they all have problems with them.
Yeah, you
guys aren't agreeing with them.
No, I agree. I agree that every last one of them has problems. So what now, Steve?
It doesn't make them invalid. It doesn't make them they're wrong. It just means
that's
that
what I'm saying, Gret.
It comes with baggage that you have to deal with.
That's what I'm saying, Gret. You because when I mentioned
what do you guys mean by a good objective theory? Because if you mean logically consistent, I can agree with you on that. We're already in agreement.
They are logically consistent. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, and
they are coherent. They are very coherent.
Sure, we're already in agreement then.
If you agree with that, then let's go back to my beginning saying that there are meta-ethical theories that atheists and agnostics and non-theists can accept without the belief in a deity. That's all I was saying.
But they're all based on subjective presuppositions, every single one of them.
If you want, but you say,
for example, to say that human flourishing is the ultimate in good, right? That's still a subjective opinion that you have to build a theory on top of.
Well, I think the argument would be that it applies to everybody ubiquitously, regardless of whether you think one way or another.
Right.
It might.
Right. That's
now he's trying to relate it to more of a.
But no, I don't think that you're understanding me. Okay, maybe say back to me what I was trying to say because I'm not sure. We're missing each other somewhere.
Well, that these things are objective in the sense that regardless of whether you or I agree with them, they hold true. And you feel you actually even have to start with the position of, do you even accept that there are moral facts? I mean, I think before you even get into a conversation of dealing with objective or subjective morality, you need to discuss, do you think that there are moral facts out there?
Right, or at least brute facts. At least brute facts in philosophy. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and so I think what I see Gret doing, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but just throwing this out there, you're taking these meta-ethical positions and you're also relating them to metaphysical and saying that not only are they meta-ethical positions, but they're also roving into the space-time, right? There's an ontological nature that these things exist, somehow incorporated into the very nature of reality. And while I get the concept, I don't know mechanistically how that would actually take place. I don't know how to wrap my head around that.
Right, I don't think that my assertion is dependent on being able to understand the mechanism of it.
But we like to explain things mechanistically. We like to know how that works. How is it woven?
I would love to know, yeah, but I don't think my assertion is dependent on the mechanism.
Go ahead, Dia.
Okay, but Gret, do you have something else you want to say, Steve, before I go?
No, go, please.
I still wanted him to tie in to ontologically tie, because there's so many things about this moral argument. Because we know, as far as history, I mean, there were civilizations who didn't believe in a specific biblical God who had morals, societies who had moral codes. Hammurabi, I mean, ancient Babylonians had moral codes. Whether they were objective or not, I mean, that's a whole nother idea. But and even honestly, Gret, and like I said, I agree with you in a lot. But honestly, even speaking about objective morality, that in itself is subjective to a lot of people, even in philosophy. But I still ask the question: how can you ontologically tie in your particular deity with morality? I'm trying to see how can, because in other words, a lot of apologists ontologically, we can ontologically tie in water with H2O, right? And this is what a lot of apologists accuse atheists and non-believers and agnostics of. We can ontologically tie water in with H2O because we understand the subatomic particles, hydrogen and oxygen. But everybody in just say 5, 6, 7, 800 years ago didn't understand, didn't know about H2O. But is that to say that they didn't understand what water was? So in other words, now we know what water is and how it is ontologically tied with H2O. But how is your particular deity ontologically tied with morality? This is my question to you.
Right. So I would say, to make my position clear, and I think this is consistent with what I've said the entire time, just because a God exists does not mean morality exists. So I think it's possible for there to be a God and it not be ontologically tied to morality. I think that's
gotcha.
I can conceive of a universe where that's the case. All I'm saying is the possibility exists if there's a God, and it doesn't exist if there's not a God.
What do you mean it doesn't exist if there's not a God?
Objective morality doesn't exist if there is no God or higher being.
Yeah, that's been your assertion. I don't think
I just can't agree with that. It's confusing. It's confusing to me. I don't understand it.
Okay, so I mean, I can flesh it out one more time if you want.
I see. That's why I just asked you. You just. It seems like it's circular because you just said that a God could exist and not be tied to morality. That's what you just said. Mm-hmm. Then you said in the same breath that I still don't think this God. I still don't think objective morality would exist if there was no God. Well, what difference would it make if there is a God that exists and he doesn't care about morality, or if there is no objective morality? Then why couldn't objective morality exist if this being does not exist? See, now you're depending your things on existing and non-existent, and it's contradictory. It makes no sense. You're saying that
I think we're missing each other because I think you might have misunderstood something I said.
Okay, I'm trying to hear you.
I know. I'm trying to explain it. Okay, so morality is dependent on God, but God doesn't just. But a God can't, or it's possible for a completely moralless God to exist. I'm just saying that would be a logically consistent universe. That's all I'm saying.
Real quick, let me get a quick question in here. George would like to know. 1 second here. Where'd you go? He says, ask Gret, what do you think about the Bible verses that encourages child and wife abuse? And thank you for the super chat, George. So he's basically asking you, well, the Bible seems to condone a lot of strange things. I mean, the Bible does seem to condone things like slavery, abuse, rape in some cases. Even I can look at that and go, yeah, I think the Bible does in some places seem to advocate for this stuff. At the very least, definitely it looks the other way. I mean, it doesn't come out, and denounce the horrific things like slavery and abuse. So how do you look at those verses and try to justify them to yourself, to your own subjective morality? Do you just say to yourself, I'm just going to turn over to that God knows better, and therefore in these cases in the Bible where these atrocities happen, God knows what's best?
Okay, so I'm happy to answer this question as long as we understand it's a completely separate topic from what.
No, it's from the live chat. It was a super chat, so I got to ask the question.
Okay, right, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it, but like my answer or how I answer this has does not at all. It doesn't have any bearing on whether or not my original assertion is correct. So, but yeah, okay, so the question is just like the atrocities that happened in the Old Testament. How do I personally deal with them? Like in my personal, how do you rationalize them? I think the question George is asking. Yeah, so I would say, I mostly just don't know. I don't find them easy to deal with, and I don't find it easy to explain them away. And I think like worse than the atrocities that happen in the Old Testament, I find like hell to be something that's very difficult and challenging to understand, and doesn't seem to be. Like, I just don't get it. The way I kind of think about it, but there's a lot I don't get about a lot of different worldviews. And so I have a bunch of different worldviews to choose from. I have to wake up every morning and live my life a certain way. And so you have to pick. It's like you have to pick something. You have to live your life a certain way. You have to base the decisions of your everyday life off of some worldview. It's inescapable. And so the worldview I've settled on after a lot is Christianity, but that doesn't mean there's not things about it that are really challenging for me to cope with. So I guess one of the things I think about is like if I had a kid who's 3 years old and the kid is chasing a ball into the street, and I try and prevent my kid from chasing after that ball, and he might be screaming and kicking, and he might not understand why why he can't chase the ball into the street because he can't see the big picture. He just sees his dad as abusive. That might be, I think that the difference between a kid and their parent is a much smaller gap than a parent or than an adult and God. And so I think it's almost, you could say it's logically consistent to believe that
you're just saying God knows best.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that answers to his questions. Do you want to continue on that? Actually, I mean, I don't. Yes, it's an answer to the question, but just saying God knows best doesn't really, to me, answer a lot.
Why does?
Why
not?
Well,
I'm fine to talk about it.
The reason it really doesn't answer a lot is because one, how do we know? Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's just like it's basically, it seems to me, all it does is just it takes responsibility and onus from yourself to say these are demonstrably bad things, and just saying, well, you know what, if this particular God exists, that makes it all okay.
You don't think it's possible that there's a bigger picture that you, in your very finite understanding of the world, can't possibly comprehend?
Well, absolutely, but I have to tell you, it minimizes the possibility that certain types of deities exist, like an omnibenevolent God. When I see things like the problem, evil, or suffering, and things of that nature, right?
Yeah. Gratuitous. I think that's fair enough. I'm not like, I get that perspective. I really do. I think it's like, I look at, I mean, the stuff in the Old Testament is hellish, but nothing is as bad as like actual hell. Like when I look at what hell is, I really don't understand it. But I
you believe in a literal fiery burning forever hell?
I don't know what I believe about that.
Okay, well, that's a fair answer. I'll tell you right now, I don't. I may be agnostic, but there's certain things I do have positions on. I don't read the Bible as that if it doesn't even make sense that an omnibenevolent God would condemn somebody for eternity for a finite existence. I mean, we're on this planet for a limited amount of time, and some people don't even live, productive enough lives to be judged. And there are religions out there that say, "Oh, well, baby that's not baptized, it's screwed. It's going to burn for eternity." That is not an omnibenevolent God. That's not even a benevolent God.
Yeah, I can certainly say
a very evil God. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, what you're saying, I think, is reasonable, and these issues are incredibly hard to deal with. I mean, I just simply don't understand hell. I don't understand stuff like that. I mean, I just don't.
Okay, well, I mean, I can't condemn you for that kind of answer. If you don't have an answer for it,
that's an honest answer, though. That's honest, Gret. That's being honest.
Yeah, no, I actually, Gret is one of my more favorite interlocutors for Christians, and
I like that shirt you got on too, Gret. I like the shirt, man.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, I lived there for 3 years.
Oh, okay. What part?
Malawi, Southeast Africa.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's all right.
So you're advocating flat Earth because you got a flat.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly that.
Awesome.
I've got this hidden agenda.
And that's the only continent that exists is Africa.
Exactly.
The ant on Africa.
You know what? That could be a thing with the Black Hebrew Israelites.
Oh yeah,
it's Africa. Yeah. The government's lying to us.
Someone call G-Man. Let him know.
I shall summon G-Man.
Let him know. We got a thing for the BHIs. Another question for you, if I will can. Tristan M. For Gret, do you believe that the
man wanted to ask something too?
Oh, does he? Okay, one sec. Do you believe that the evolutionary theory explains human evolution? And if so, what is your interpretation of Adam and Eve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I personally don't believe. I personally am inclined. I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I've never had the prerequisites to look at all of the data and make a educated decision on it. That said, with my very limited understanding of the topic, which is extremely limited, I would say that I'm inclined to believe that the Earth is not old. Or sorry, the Earth is old. I'm not a young Earth creationist. I don't take Genesis 1 literally. Based on the evidence I've seen for evolution, I'm inclined to believe in evolution and how that. But I'm also inclined to believe in a historical Adam and Eve. But I don't quite know how that works out. So I don't, yeah, I don't believe that Genesis is a history textbook in the same way that you read a history textbook in your 5th grade elementary class. I think there's something deeper going on there.
Gret will be agnostic in about 2 years, Steve.
Hey, come on!
I'm telling you, man. I've heard this, man, and he's coming. He's coming.
Hey, I think it's Ozzy who said something along the lines that Gnosticism might be a step toward atheism. I think I've heard other people have say that as well, and that might be the case. Actually, somebody had a really good quote on that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's basically, you start off with one position and you kind of like you fall down this well of changing positions, and a lot of people end up eventually in an atheist, hard atheist type position, right? I mean, an actual I believe God does not exist kind of thing. I think there is something to be said of that progressive type thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow that line. I mean, I'm comfortable in my position. I'm happy with that. But I think you make a valid point there, EA. I mean, a lot of Christians, when they do, and again, Gret, I'm not trying to like dissuade you on this, but I do think a lot of people, when they do look at some of these more intricate details of things, they go, something's not quite right. And I mean, in my own experience from my leaving theism, I was never a young earth creationist or anything like that. No, but there's some things I just didn't think added up. And worse is I never really experienced anything with Christ himself. I never had that, he's my best buddy, he's my best friend. This personal relationship that Christians seem to talk about. Now one could argue, well, then you never really were questioned. And I'm fine with that. Right. Okay, fine. But I
have to interrupt real quick. Gret, if G-Man joins, you're a white Hebrew Israelite. Okay, I just got off Skype with him.
Okay, one sec. One sec. So here's the thing. If I interrupt my train of thought there. I was going somewhere with this. If I didn't have a personal relationship with Christ, or somebody doesn't either, then what is Christ trying to do? I mean, if he wanted me to believe, then why is it when I was a theist, I never had that personal relationship? Now, one could argue it depends on what denomination you were. People know that I joined the Mormon Church when I was 17. But why would that even matter, though? Why would Christ lead me to that if he wants me to go to be a Roman Catholic, or he wants me to be a Calvinist? Which, by the way, if Calvinism is true, then it doesn't matter what the hell I do anyways, right? I mean, you're the elector.
Yeah. Okay, so the question. I'm not following what the question is. I'm sort of following.
Well, it's not really a question. It's more of just a self autobiographical thing that I saw a lot of issues, and so I think EA's point was that if you look at these questions and you've been honest about your answers, some of them lead to a deconversion or at least agnosticism, to the point where you say, you know what, I don't have an answer on this. I'm just not going to answer. I'm going to suspend judgment on these propositions, which I think is a very honest, open position.
Yeah, I think I'd point out I'm not. The version of Christianity I am is Anglican, like that's where I am a member at church. But if you look at
a white Hebrew Israelite, okay.
If you look at Eastern Orthodox religion, at Eastern Orthodox churches, they appeal heavily to mystery, and they have been for over 1,000 years. So I don't think it's inconsistent to be you can't be a fundamentalist Christian. You can't say you have all the answers. Okay, I get what you're saying. Like what you're saying, this is what fundamentalist Christians believe, and I don't buy all of their tenets. And so
right, because they think they have all the answers. They'll come up with any bullshit they need to answer the question.
But that's not every Christian. And there's a lot of Christians who are like, yeah, there's plenty that's up for interpretation. And the way I look at it is just like there's a lot of problems with theism. I think there's a lot of problems with atheism as well. And there's a lot of problems all over the board. There's things that are hard to deal with. And so you've got this field in front of you. You just got to pick whatever makes the most sense. And so for me, awesome. And what I've seen Christianity is that.
And we can have another talk about that topic another time, because I don't want to go on the whole atheism thing. But JD, you had a couple questions asked and then deconverted, man. Even though, we had a little technical issue with the group chat here. But anyway, so JD, go ahead, please.
It would be you call me the minute I leave the room to go stir some crock pot.
You know what? I have perfect timing on that. I make sure that I wait till chewing on something or has gotten up to
and then suddenly you call me as the one
because I have psychic ability. I'm demonstrating them all the time. I will win that JREF 1 million award at one day. I'm telling you.
Anyway, hi, Gret.
Yes.
How are you? I'm JD.
Nice to meet you, JD. I'm good. How are you?
You've never seen my show because it's terrible.
Well, okay. I'll see if I can check it out.
Just two questions. One is, when you say something is moral or immoral, what do you mean?
Well, that's a good question. When I define morality specifically, it's that my loose definition is it's the goodness or badness of a specific action or inaction. But at the same time, the goodness and badness is something that's transcendent, hard to define.
Well, I agree with you there, but it's hard to find. But it's close enough. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. I'm not gonna lie. It's like asking what's the difference between supernatural and natural. Who the hell knows? Come up with what you want and then discuss it. I don't know if there's even JD an easy answer for that question. Actually,
yeah. Actually, I hate to say, can you answer it again? I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Maybe if you just do it once, it'll play.
I mean, my definition of morality that I've stuck to for a while is the goodness or badness of an action or inaction.
Is that G?
Well, that then of course, I mean, that kind of raises the question of what goodness or badness is. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, this is something that philosophers have been debating for all of human consciousness.
All right. Well, my second question is:
do you have a definition of morality?
No, I really don't. I lean towards non-cognitive. That any moral proposition someone makes really just boils down to grr or yay.
Yeah.
Isn't that more emotionism?
It's really just evolved apes emoting at you.
Yeah, no, actually, there's actually something called emotivism. Emotivism, it was what it boils down to. Morals basically go down to boo.
Rape, grr, cake, yay.
Yeah.
I'm fuzzier on that. That's why I don't argue that much, because I don't really have any good hard answers. My second question is, if you find someone who defines morality differently, what do you say to them? Like, you say morality is about goodness or badness, and they say no, it's doing what Thor wants. It doesn't really matter what you pick.
Yeah.
They have a completely different definition that has nothing to do with yours. How do you convince them that no, they're using morality wrong, or that their morality is not the correct one?
I don't do much convincing. I'm not much of a. I've even talked to my pastor about this. Almost to a concerning degree. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm an evangelist. Like, I'm not trying to convert people. I just don't have that tendency. So I say things that I think are
not so much convert, but convince someone that you might be correct.
Okay, about my version of morality. I mean, I don't necessarily.
I have a definition of morality. Like, you say morality is
the goodness or badness of a particular.
Someone else says no, morality is, and then they say something completely different. How do you convince them? No, it really should be goodness and badness.
I guess I'd have to hear their counter definition and why they disagree with mine.
Yeah, I mentioned that because that's probably the most frustrating thing about moral arguments, is that a lot of times you're not even on the same page on what morality is about.
I mean,
absolutely right.
The goodness and badness thing is not bad.
What's right? What's wrong? What's good? What's bad?
I tend to go with the well-being of conscious entities.
Yeah.
But people don't have to go. They say no. Morality is about what God wants other things to do, and then it's like, well, hold on, we haven't even talked about goodness, badness yet. Well, goodness, bad has nothing to do with it. You do what God wants.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to have any discussion because there's really no way to get off the starting ground.
And JD, let me ask you on that, because it is very difficult to know, what good, what bad, wrong, right? You ever watch a video on this particular topic where it describes a prowler going to a house, and he looks in the window and he doesn't think anybody's there, but on the ground is an older lady unconscious, and he breaks the window with a rock trying to get in to steal something, and she is not unconscious, or she wakes up from her unconscious state and screams, and he runs off. Now what happened was there was carbon monoxide that had built up in the house, and when he broke the window, it released the carbon monoxide and it saved her life. Now, is this a good or bad action? Is this moral or immoral? He was trying to steal, which is we all consider to be bad, but he saved the woman's life, which is a good, so does it go to consequentialism? Does it go to the intent of the person? There's a lot of variables that go into these meta-ethical theories and in what determines right or wrong. And I think you're exactly right, JD. It takes a long time to suss that out between two people when they have these types of conversations, which makes these debates on morals very difficult. We ran into that with Gret and Holy Kool-Aid. We saw that happening. Now, I think this one was a little bit closer because I think Zod and you probably agree on more things than you guys actually realize. But JD, right. I mean, do you see what I'm getting with that, JD?
I also wanted to add to that. One of the reasons I think that it's important to bring this up is a common thing, a common just like riff that I see YouTube atheists go into is how immoral God is and how bad God is, the God of the Old Testament.
Well,
and
that's a general statement, though.
Slavery is.
But that's,
right. No, I understand.
That's a very, very, very generalized statement. I know a lot of atheists that don't go down that route. Now there are some, but
I'm talking about the preeminent like YouTube atheists, T.J. Kirk, and even like Sam Harris and things like that. I mean, I Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. I mean, all of them talk about God as if he's a moral monster.
Okay, that's a fair enough. There are more monster arguments, but I just don't like lumping a bunch of people because a lot of people don't even. I mean, this because there's like some atheist leaders out there doesn't mean that all atheists follow them. I mean,
I agree with that. Yeah, I've met lots of atheists who don't follow them. I'm just talking about the ones with influence seem to be the ones who are bash. I mean, like I would say, Steve, you are one of the most reasonable atheists I've talked to.
But I'm not an atheist.
Or
well, that's probably why. No, I don't know. No, a lot of atheists are very rational people. It really bugs me when people say, "Oh, atheism is an irrational position." Then I try to ask them why, because I mean, I could defend atheism and I could defend justifying it if I wanted to. It's just not an epistemic position I hold.
Right. So, anyways, but the point I was okay. So let me try and backtrack and take away my my overgeneralized statement for the YouTube atheists that do use the God is a moral monster argument, which from my perspective, it's the majority. I could be wrong. Or it's the majority of leaders, I would say, of influencers.
The more vocalized.
Let's say, the more vocalized. Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. So for the people who use that, it's like, okay, you're making claims about morality. So like, where's your definition of bad? Like, why are you saying that God is, when you say God's a moral monster, when you say God is bad, what definitions what does bad come from? Where does your definition of bad come from? Does it come from Sam Harris? Is Sam Harris the actual arbiter of good and bad in your universe? And we can't even, these conversations become really difficult to have and unhelpful because we can't talk about these foundational issues. So I appreciated.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I appreciate is it JD or DJ? JD?
JD.
Yeah, I appreciate JD asking like, okay, well, what do you mean by morality? And like trying to understand my answer and him giving his own answer. I mean, that's like, we can't even, nothing that happens above that can be productive until we start talking at that level.
But, and I definitely agree with that. And that's what my point to JD was with that story that I gave. It makes it very difficult to determine if an action is right or wrong. I mean, let me ask you, Gret, I mean, in the story that I gave, the person who broke the window, was their action right or wrong? Or better yet, was it good or bad? Was it a good action or a bad action? Well, it's a bad action. If you're looking at it, he was trying to steal. That's why he broke the window. It's a good action for the consequentialism of it, that it saved the woman's life.
Exactly.
So there's
a nothing action if there's no such thing as good and bad.
Well, that's why I said earlier, Steve, when you're talking about morality, even objective morality, even in the undercurrents, there's still a lot of things within meta-ethical realms are still subjective. You understand what I mean?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I agree.
But there are some things that are objective that we have that we are going to agree on. We know that, so we do know that there is an objective morality.
And I'm not convinced that there's a dichotomy there. I don't think it's either objective morality exists or subjective morality exists. Right, I don't see an issue with both of them. But the potential of both of them existing. Now, I could be completely hosed on that. I got to tell you, meta-ethical theories are complicated as all hell. Yes, I've read up on them.
I love studying.
It's fascinating. Oh, dude, let me tell you, I find meta-ethical theories to be fascinating, but they're not something easy to wrap your head around. And so I struggle with really trying to comprehend these meta-ethical theories, because if you look at a meta-ethical flowchart, if you look at even just starting off with whether you're a cognitivist or a non-cognitivist when it comes to truth out propositions for morals, if they even can be assigned propositional value. If you look at the flowcharts for them, they're complicated. They're
yes, they are. They are.
You know, they're nothing.
It's a lot of study you have to do to really understand them.
Right. There's nothing you just go look at it and go, okay, I'm going to go figure this out on my own. It's damn hard.
That's what I was trying to relay to Gret. I want Gret to actually go into a few more if he can, and see what I was just saying to him. You know, it's not an easy. It's like you're right. It's not an easy study. It's something that you actually have to get into.
It's almost as difficult. Well, it's probably even more difficult. I mean, I always try to ask people, you know, okay, do you have a established theory of justification? Do you have an established theory of knowledge? Do you have an established theory of truth? Right. Those aren't easy things either. Theories of truth are difficult. You know, I tend to deflationary theory, but people can argue about, you know, a coherent theory of truth or correspondence theory of truth. These are all complicated things. It's hard to wrap your head around. Even when I have somebody come in who's an expert on it, try to explain these things, it doesn't really always sink in because there's just so much involved in these topics. You might as well just be talking about like advanced calculus with people sometimes. But
yeah, hey Steve, Gret, nice talking to you, Gret.
Hey, it was nice talking to you too, man.
I got to go out for a minute, man. I'll be back, Steve.
Okay, awesome. And don't forget, EA has a debate with Max coming up. So
Max Hangouts, yeah. All right, y'all.
Yeah. All right, thanks, buddy. All right, somebody else had a question too, and I think I looked past the. Oh, he already left. Okay, so anyways, hey G-Man, welcome.
Hey, what's up? I was told that there was a Hebrew Israelite in here, and they said they might help, and I don't see you guys know about anything.
I could pretend to be one.
He's actually from. He said he lived in Africa. I think it was Southeast Africa. Correct, Gret?
Yeah, Malawi is a country, but it's Southeast Africa.
Yeah. I think no. Correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, Ganesh, 1 second, I'll get to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, G-Man. In order to be a black Hebrew Israelite, you have to be black, do you not? Or Puerto Rican or some whatever.
In order to be a Hebrew Israelite,
Puerto Rican blackness.
In order to be
well, no, but I think they incorporate. If I correct me if I'm wrong, but they kind of incorporate other groups as well into that.
It's like you're sort of darkish.
Exactly.
Lineage, or you have to convert. That's the only way.
Okay, so what can a white person be a black Hebrew Israelite?
They can be an Israelite or a Hebrew, if they convert, or if they are born of, if they're in the direct lineage of Jacob.
Okay, and what do you do? Ancestry? Did you go to Ancestry?
There's another way that you can become an Israelite too, but it would be a spiritual one. You would have to believe on Jesus. You have to be born again.
Hey, G-Man, I have E1B1A in my genome. Does that make me a Hebrew Israelite?
I don't know.
I know the best way to become a black Hebrew Israelite. First, you have to be black, and then you have to take a brick and you need to hit yourself repeatedly in the temple with it until there's very little cognition left.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that maybe they should start off being flat earthers, because then they don't have that far to go. They, one hit and they're already a BHI.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the progression would be. I guess black Hebrew Israelites are less delusional than flat earthers. I guess. I don't know. It's kind of hard to figure out where they'd be on this.
Yeah, I don't know. That could be an interesting discussion one day.
Yeah, I don't. How much do you have to deny to be a black Hebrew Israelite versus how much you have to deny to be a flat earther? I think flat earthers are pretty far ahead. I mean, you basically all of modern science goes out the window. There's really not much left to be a flat earther. But black Hebrew Israelites, well, I assume most of them are creationists. So that's not that bad yet. And then there's the crazy stuff about how. What was the core belief? G-Man, you can probably tell it faster than I do. What's the core belief of the Israelites that really piss you off?
Oh, the white man's the devil, and they believe
right there. So they got that right.
Devil. They believe that black people in this country, black Latinos, Native American Indians, are the true Israelites, which is a bunch of baloney.
It isn't the reason why they believe it is because of a curse or something.
Well, they believe that black people, Latinos, and Native American Indians in this country are cursed. And they believe that Deuteronomy 20 predicted that the transatlantic slave trade brought the Israelites over here, which is nonsense.
Well, why do they say they call them the black Hebrew? Should they be like the not white, since they take different shades in there? They don't believe
that the Israelites were white. They go in the Bible and they show you all these different verses of how they were dark skinned. I showed them that the Israelites are a mixed multitude.
I'm pretty sure that they were They're Middle Eastern, right?
So because of the curse.
Brown.
The thing is, in 70 AD, when they, a matter of fact, even before 70 AD, the Israelites was known for intermarrying with other people. They had interracial marriages all the time. You know what I mean? So obviously they would look different. You know what I mean? Like all of them are not going to come out looking black. You can look at King first.
King. Give them some leeway. I could give them some leeway and say, hey, 80,000 years ago we were all in Africa and black, so that's close, right?
Don't we all have a little black in us?
Everyone does, kind of, in a sense.
Only Steve Zanus
color.
Yeah, baby, I'm back.
There were only people in Africa, and I'm pretty sure they were all black.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick, Ganesh has a question he wants to ask. And look at Pig, I've warned you before. Don't take a civil conversation like this and derail it to base things. There's no reason to. I've warned you before, so come on, you know better. In the group chat, say whatever you want. But let's keep it. I do have people that watch these things, and it just doesn't need to go to that level. I don't think.
Hey, Gret, thanks.
Go ahead. Yeah, Ganesh.
Yeah. Hey, Gret, thanks for the discussion. I think you base your premise on the fact that objective morality can exist, right?
I don't understand what you're asking yet.
So,
you got a little mic there issue problem, Ganesh.
Steve McRae, how you doing?
Hey, it's General Han Solo.
It's been a while.
Yeah, well, you've dropped off the planet. It happens. Well, you're in Australia, so that's what happens, because you're on the other side of the planet. Gravity.
Yeah, it's like 4 in the morning at the moment.
Ganesh, you have a mic issue, so if you're trying to speak, we cannot hear you. Just FYI. All right, we'll figure that out. So, anyways, General, did you watch the debate?
Nope, but I'm familiar with Gret. Not entirely, but I've seen him talk before.
Okay. Just curious. Oh, wait, no, Ganesh, you still got a hum. It was working there for a while.
Which, by the way, great job that you do, Gret, with your missionary work and the work you do in Africa. So really commendable.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Hey! Oh my God! Psycho's in here! Oh God! He hasn't been in here in ages.
Hey, what's going on, Steve? What's
up, my friend, my old friend? I've been loving your stuff, by the way. I do try to get over when you have your hangouts. I'm not even exaggerating. I so enjoyed the conversation you had with EA a couple weeks ago. It was riveting. It really, really was.
Yeah, I enjoyed that hangout. Got a chance to touch on a lot of things and everything. I heard y'all asking about the Hebrew Israelites. What you was asking whether or not a non-black person could be a Hebrew. That depends on which Hebrew you talk to, because it's not no one doctrine that all the Hebrews follow. The only thing that all the Hebrews subscribe to is the fact that they're the original Hebrew Israelites that the Bible speaks of. Everything else is kind of scattered all over the place depending on which Hebrew you talk to. But most of them will tell you that it's all according to the bloodline, and they base it according to who your father was. Whatever your father was, that's what you are. So if your father was black and your mother wasn't black, that means you was black, and so forth and so forth and so forth. That's pretty much what they subscribe to.
It sounds like it's a really arbitrary thing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Ganesh, your mic. Want your mic check again?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that.
5 by 5.
Yeah. Gret.
Yes.
I have issue with. Just to clarify, you do hold the position that objective morality can exist, right?
Yes.
I will concede to you that in certain aspects we can have objective moral facts, but morality as a system can never be objective.
Okay.
In whatever way you consider, even if it is from an all-powerful, all-benevolent, or however you want to define God, it is still that particular God's moral system. A different God in a different place could have a different moral system. So morality as a system in itself can never be objective.
Yeah, I would say that's only true if God's nature is like identical to ours. But if God has a different nature than ours, then it's totally possible.
Can we stop pretending that God has a nature?
Well, I think when somebody says the nature of God, they're talking about the aspect of a deity, a parameter of sorts, to try to understand it in a way that a human person could understand it if such a deity does exist. I think it's just a type of a way to relate.
I like to ask them a question.
No. But sure. One second.
Yeah,
but Gret, don't you? I mean, even in that case, isn't the morality still based on the nature of the being creating the moral system? Because what you said was, if God has a different nature, then we could have an objective moral system, which means the moral system that inherently comes out of whoever is creating it is dependent on his or her or whatever it is nature. Correct?
Yeah. So
go ahead,
okay. So I think I hear what you're saying. You're saying it's kind of the passing the stone back or passing the buck back. Like if morality, any moral system is based on some kind of subjective moral framework, right? And then if we were to say, well, no, God's the one who's deciding what's moral and immoral, then that's still a being, and we still have to appeal to his. We have to admit that his whim is still subjective, and I don't think that I don't agree with that, because I think that is I mean, it's certainly possible, right? It's certainly possible that God could create a subjective moral framework. But what I'm saying is it would also be possible for a being that we don't quite understand and that's infinite and totally outside of the realm of our comprehension can create something that is truly objective in a universal sense. I think it's possible. We just can't. It's not possible it's just probably pretty difficult for finite creatures like ourselves to understand.
No, but again, that's going back to the question, the original question. That still brings us to the problem, right? You cannot say for sure that even if I grant you that there is a God, you cannot be sure that there is only one God. There could be more.
Sure.
Which means, then again, coming back to the problem, the moral system that we received from a particular God is still subjective on that particular God. You cannot say for sure that a moral system given by another God, another deity, will be the same as the one given by this God. For example, a God of humans will have. You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, but then if that is the case, then how can we ever say an objective moral system can exist?
Yeah, I think that's kind of well, I think it eliminates.
How would it be possible? Yeah, it eliminates it entirely. Then morality as a system becomes.
You're saying it's only impossible. Yeah, you're saying it's only impossible if there's multiple gods, in that situation, right? But that's what I'm saying is
no. That is even if I grant you that there is a deity. We both do not know that. We both don't know the nature of this deity. It is something inherently unknowable, is what you're saying, right? We are finite creatures. The deity is infinite.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we even discuss about an objective moral system from something? I mean, can is not I would say it's not the correct decision there, or the honest answer, if you will.
You're right, Ganesh.
And let me clarify, because I think Ganesh is making a really good point here. According to the way Gret is looking at it, then I do think it does eliminate the possibility of objective morality as he's describing it. It doesn't eliminate altogether, because the way I describe objective morality, it doesn't matter if there's multiple gods. But the way Gret's arguing it, if there's multiple gods, I think it does eliminate the objective morality that you're trying to argue for. Do you guys agree with that?
Even I agree with that, but I don't think that eliminates.
I love that. Even I agree with that. Okay, fair enough. Good.
Yeah, but even if there is only one deity, then it would still be, again, subjective to that particular deity.
Right, but we don't understand the nature of that deity.
Okay, G doesn't seem to agree with this. So, G-Man, you don't agree with that particular statement?
No, I don't agree that morality is subjective. I believe that it is totally objective, and I can bring up a topic that's brought up a lot: that God is a murderer. Is that objectively true, or is that subjectively true?
It's absolutely true.
That wasn't the question.
If someone, then that is objectively true.
Then if that is absolutely true, and there are absolute truths, then morality is objective. It is not subjective.
I conceded that. I started my question by saying that I will concede to you that there are objective moral facts. Murder is wrong. Rape is wrong. I concede
about rape?
I'm talking about morality as a system, not separate moral facts.
When is rape good? When is rape good?
That is what I said. It's never good.
It's never good. So that's two things. So we know that murdering someone is not good.
It's bad.
We know that raping someone is not good. So would that be objective or would that be subjective?
Are we going to do this apologetics?
Well, yeah, I got to say real quick, G-Man, you're going down a different line that's really has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I'm just making sure that your audience know where I stand, since I'm in this room and you guys are saying that it's subjective. I want to make sure your audience knows that I believe that it's objective and that's baloney.
I think most of us are arguing that. Most of us in here accept objective morality. It seems a lot of people in here accept. I accept objective morality exists, and I'm pretty sure if Raytheus was in here,
like a question. You mind if I ask the question?
Sure, but one sec. Ganesh's question was, and this is why I think it was a very good question. He said, according to the way Gret defines objective morality, such that for his particular deity of choice, if there's multiple deities, then it does seem to negate the possibility of there being an actual objective morality for that deification system, because any deity at that point would have an objective moral framework, and they would be obviously conflicts with each other, and therefore you can't say that there's objective morality, because there's either one objective moral framework that exists in that regard, or there's none. You can't have 50,000 different gods having 50,000 versions of objective morality, because at that point is clearly not objective morality. And I think Gret actually, like I said, he agreed with that, and you said you disagree with that, and I'm kind of curious why there's a disagreement there. It seems to follow.
Can I ask the guy with the purple shirt and the microphone in his head a question real quick?
You do realize that Gret's a Christian, right?
Yeah, I just want to ask. I didn't know his name. Like I said,
Gret.
Gret's your name, right? Gret, let me ask you a question. The Bible says that there is no other gods beside the God of the Bible, right? And that he's above all of these other guys. He's proven this multiple times in Scripture. Can there possibly be an opinion higher than the true and living God?
I would hope God doesn't hold mere opinions, for one.
I asked him the question: is there an opinion, a thought, an idea that's higher than that of God's?
I think if I'm working with the same definitions of God that you are, then I would say no.
Okay, so my last question is: if there's no opinions that's higher than God, then how is morality subjective? And that's my question for you. I'm not saying that you say that's the case. I'm just saying, how exactly is it subjective, since what he says goes pretty much?
Oh, I think morality. I'm inclined to believe that morality is objective. So
I agree with you.
I don't know that we're in disagreement on that.
No, we're not in disagreement. I just wanted to point that out because the questions that are being asked, I think, are easy to debunk.
If I may, Jan,
I got to step away for like 3 minutes, but I give you control. Okay.
Just to let you know,
hey, Jan, I got a question for you, real quick.
I got to leave in about an hour.
You would agree that rape is bad, correct?
JDK was speaking. I gotta wait till he finishes, and then I'll answer your question.
Trying to remember what the hell my question was. Just lost it for a second. Come back to me. Where are your question? Hold on. It fell on the floor here. It fell on the floor. Let me pick it up real quick. It's got to be around here somewhere. Okay.
Can I continue my discussion with Gret, or
sure,
should I wait?
I'll try to remember.
Gret. So what you're saying is, I assume what you're saying is, there is only one deity, the deity of your choice. Are you saying that?
Oh, I remember my question, by the way.
Yeah, Ganesh, I can't. I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Okay. Are you saying that? So Are you saying that there is only one deity?
I'm not commenting on that.
Okay, so
my assertion is like very, very, very simple. Mm-hmm. Objective morality is only possible in the universe with a higher being. We're only talking about possibilities here. I'm not saying God exists. I'm not saying.
And that is where I want to get in. So, objective morality, even in a universe with a higher being, you say it comes from the higher being, correct?
It potentially could. It potentially could.
Yeah, potentially it could come from the higher being, is what you're saying.
But not necessarily.
Yeah, I know. The higher being could have infused the universe with objective morality, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
could have.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that becomes a problem because that is the higher being's morality.
Right, but what I'm saying is I don't agree with that because I'm saying it's possible that the higher being has a different nature than our being. So
it doesn't matter. It is still the higher being's morality.
It does matter. It actually is. It's crucial to understand. So you and I can say something is moral or immoral, and that's my subjective opinion about it. And that's because I'm a finite being, but an infinite being might have a different nature that we just don't quite understand. And so applying your rules to applying rules that apply to finite creatures and saying that they have to work the same way on an infinite creature, I don't think that follows.
Again, coming back to your point, let's take an analogy. Murder is wrong. If the higher being has the nature of a black widow spider, let's say, for example,
mm-hmm.
then for them, murder is not wrong. It's just part of their nature, correct?
Right.
Which means we objectively differ. So, again, it comes back to the question, morality becomes subjective. I'll concede to you that there are objective moral facts, but morality as a system cannot be objective, is what I'm driving at.
Can we discuss that real quick? Because there's a huge distinction there that needs to be pointed out. There's a difference between objective moral facts existing and as a system as a whole. And that's the distinction that you're trying to make. And I think that's lost upon a lot of people.
Yes, that is exactly the distinction I'm trying to make. I will concede to you that there are objective moral facts. It could come from a greater being, but morality as an objective system can never exist. It doesn't matter the nature of
that. I have to kind of agree with that.
So, Steve, you agree that objective morality can never exist?
No. As a system, listen to Ganesh saying that there's a distinction here. And I'm not going to assert that objective moral systems cannot exist. No, but I think there's the point to be made that just because objective facts exist, which I do agree, objective facts probably do exist, it doesn't mean that the objective moral systems exist. There's two different things there in play. And so
to give you an analogy, Gret. I can't think of a good analogy.
I do have to run pretty soon, unfortunately.
Oh, look at the Christian run. Oh, I'm just kidding.
I know. I was like, there's no winning here.
So the basic distinction I'm trying to make here is you are speaking about morality as a system, as an entire system, not just objective moral facts, correct, Gret?
I'm talking about the potential for objective morals, but an objective moral
systems. Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
A moral system there can be objective moral systems in a universe with subjective morality.
Sure, framework can exist, yes, but a framework can either be objective or subjective. But again,
can you define or help me understand the difference between framework and system?
I think they're interchangeable in this regard.
Framework is, I would say, the basics of the basics, a collection of facts, if you will. And a system is, depending on the situation, what we derive from the framework. For example, interpreting laws based on the situation would be a system, but the laws themselves would be a framework.
I see your distinction, But I think overall they can be used almost synonymously most of the time. And
Yeah,
I see the subtle distinction you are making there. Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, breaking into someone's house is bad, could be a framework. But if someone breaks into someone else's house to rescue them because they are choking on the ground, you can interpret that as you will. So again, breaking into someone's house could be a framework, but we can interpret the framework depending on the situation within a system. Do you understand the difference there?
I think so. Yeah. So do you have and so your question to follow that would be what?
I would concede to you that objective moral facts exist. You can create an objective moral framework, but you can never have an objective moral system, which is what you seem to be arguing for.
I think it is possible to have an objective moral system. I think an all-powerful being is capable of creating an objective system.
How would you know that?
Yeah,
that's a different question. That's a
good question.
No.
When he throws in all-powerful, then when he throws in all-powerful, then every logic goes out the window. He can just say it's all-powerful. So that is, I'm sorry to say, that is not a honest answer. We are discussing about a deity here, so you have to make the distinction there.
I'm not allowed to
deity is all.
Well, even an all-powerful deity still has limitations, according to most Christians. A god can't will himself to not be a god. That was, I think, what's called the principle of eternal verities.
But giving another example, can God create a rock so heavy that he couldn't lift it? So again, there is still limitations for an all-powerful being. So if you don't understand the nature of the being, so if you don't understand the nature of the being, as you said, then the honest answer should be we don't know. It shouldn't be there could be. It should be we don't know.
I like that. The whole kind of God lift a rock so heavy can't lift it. I don't know if that's a limitation to God as so much as asking. I like the way someone else puts it, is that it's asking God to fail, and God by its nature can't fail. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to take a test, and I got an A+ on my test, got 100%, but you failed at failing. You didn't get a 0. It's
okay. Then
let me ask a deity like that to do that, because it's like asking somebody, well, yeah, you got a perfect score, but you know what? You failed at not getting a failing grade. It doesn't really make much sense in that regard to me, right?
Yeah. Then why was God testing? Who was it? Abraham and Isaac. Why was God testing if he's supposed to know everything in advance? Why would he do that?
Well, there's a lot of whole things with that question, or don't with the precognition of God, but that's a whole different thing. I mean, you could actually, if somebody really wanted to argue that point, Dave, they can go into William Lane Craig's, middle knowledge, where God knows what you're going to do. This is like an open theism. God knows what you're going to do, giving a certain situation, and so what God does is, if he wants a desired outcome, he's going to modally collapse one reality into the as opposed to another, and put you into the reality where if X occurs, then he knows Y will occur, and it'll put you in X rather than where he knows Y, Z will occur. Now, it's a very, very strange way of looking at this intermediate knowledge or middle knowledge that they call it, but it's not exactly incoherent.
Hey guys, I gotta run. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Gret. Very good debate.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll have more. Bring your friends over. I know you had like 3 or 4 people. I do try to get over your channel. I do watch it every so often. But next time you have one of those things, hey, invite me. I will go into the Lion's Den with you guys anytime.
Okay, that sounds good. I'd love to do that.
All
right, bye guys.
Now who are we going to play with? Oh, we got General in here.
So
get G-Man back. I want to
dance with me, just dance and dance away.
I wanted to ask G-Man how that separation of church and state was going for him.
Oh, I have yet to ask him about that. Yes.
Well, Steve, you left for 2 seconds and muted the microphone, and I was saving it until you got back. And split.
Yeah, I told you I was going to be back. I had to go. Wow.
I was going to ask him if rape's so good or rape's so bad, then why did God essentially rape Mary?
Yeah, again,
he's God, right?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of rape implies a lot of different things. So I mean, I don't like really basal arguments. I mean, these I like the more in-depth types of discussions, and I don't think going, well, God raped Mary is really conducive to an actual.
Yeah, but this is G-Man. There is no such thing as an in-depth conversation.
Oh, I don't think G-Man really. I mean, I could tell he didn't get Ganesh's fine points. I mean,
I was going to point out too. I don't know if you noticed the antennas next to his television. That's how you steal cable. I was going to point that out to him, Mr. Morals.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Yeah, I was just going to have some fun.
I don't like accusations like that.
By the way, I'm curious on your position and like the other guy's position here, like on objective morality, as Gret defines it. I don't think it can ever exist as Gret defines it.
I know for myself. I know for myself, I can't put my finger on it, and I'm not afraid of punishment. I'm not afraid of the law, but it's just not in me to do someone harm, not to show empathy, be generous when I can. It's just in me. I don't go by any rule book. I mean, this is the society we live in, and society dictates what is acceptable, what is not. But even so, I just can't see needing a hall monitor for someone to behave. I mean, I remember seeing an old video of Ray Comfort saying that if it wasn't for the Bible, he'd be out raping and killing. No, actually, Eric Holbein said that too. They were in the same room interviewing each other.
Yeah, I've actually had people that I've asked that question to, and they answer yes. And my response to that, then you are immoral. You're an immoral person. If you could answer yes to that question, if God doesn't exist or the Bible isn't true, would you be out raping, pillaging, killing, stealing, and all that stuff?
Well, I tell those people keep believing.
Yeah, no, I that's one of the reasons why I'm saying we can't eliminate all religion. A lot of people want to be an anti-theist. I think that one of the benefits of religion is it keeps mentally. So it's like sociopathic people like that from doing those things. That's fine. I get that. But my
so let me ask you, Steve.
Well, hang on.
From this standpoint, because you're better at this, you're much better at this than I am. So when I say I can't put my finger on why I want to be a good or strive to be a better person every day, is that what these people are calling God inside you? Is that what they're doing?
I have no idea, but I just tell you that when a person tells me that they have to have a Bible or something to tell them what's right or wrong, I have to question them as being possibly a sociopath. I mean, I didn't know right or wrong when I even looked before I even knew what the Bible was.
Answer Steve's question. Yes, that's what they're insinuating. They're insinuating that's God inside you.
I don't. Can you expound upon what that actually means, though?
The objective. I mean, the nature of you, the goodness in you, is what they define as God. I think is what he's saying.
I thought goodness is defined as God, or godness. What God does is defined as good.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
So wouldn't a mental illness then just block out God at that point?
Mental illness, what?
A sociopath, that's just a mental illness. It's blocking out God's light. So anyone can become a sociopath. So anyone can just block out God's light. I'm not sure.
Isn't a sociopath just a total lack of empathy? Isn't that what
that's one of the characteristics, if I remember correctly, of sociopath is non-empathetic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I had actually asked not too long ago a PhD in this area, and because I want to know what the difference between a sociopath was and a psychopath, and she basically told me nowadays they're pretty much synonymous terms.
I mean, yeah, I mean, with a sociopath, I mean that doesn't really note any like mental illness. I mean, it usually just means that you're just antisocial. You really don't.
No. It is a mental illness. When you can kill someone and feel nothing, it's a mental illness at that point.
Well,
I mean, getting pleasure from killing is a mental illness, in my understanding.
You'd have a lot of Marines disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I mean, they call it antisocial personality disorder anymore, but I have a DSM-3 here. I haven't looked at it in quite some time. you know, I'm not really in a position to say whether if you're considered a sociopath, is it a full on, always a mental disorder? I mean, I think there's something called schizotypical personality traits that fall under psychopathy that don't make you necessarily a sociopath. But if you know, we can definitely table that for another day where we have something here that's a lot more.
Yeah, I don't think sociopath is associated necessarily with killing alone. Like like Steve said, is a personality trait.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you could be a sociopath and not want to go out and kill people. They're not like that much related.
I was married to one.
She wanted to go out killing people.
She tried her best with me.
Yeah, but
yeah, I just take sociopath as somebody who's has lack of empathy. RC.
Yeah, that's the way I define it.
And antisocial can mean one of two things. Antisocial could be, a personality deficit, or somebody just doesn't want to talk to people.
But I know a lot of sociopaths that are very social people. It's just something that they can flip like a light switch, and boom, you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, you're done.
Well, they not even know how to fit in society properly, and they look at these cues and they just kind of follow along with it. What is a normal person going to do in this situation? How are they going to feel empathetic? I don't have these feelings, so I'm going to act like I do have some kind of emotional empathy towards somebody. I mean, haven't you watched Dexter?
Well, no, I'm talking about
great show.
When I was working on, Tony Soprano, we're figuring out a guy here who Melfi finds out at the very end, from her husband, who was another shrink, telling him, like, look, you're being sucked into this because you have empathy. You're showing empathy towards Tony because he loves children and animals. But that's about it. I mean, he was a likable character, even though, by all definition, he was a psychopath. But again, very social.
Yeah. Well, again, you could be a sociopath and still pretend to get along with people.
Yeah, you do a good job.
I'm awesome at it. Yeah. I
mean, Steve, by the way, two great shows today. Phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And by the way, we had a great show yesterday too with the flat earther thing. That was amazing.
I have never seen so many grown adults just turn into just like I'm sorry,
cats, right?
Just like big pussies. It's just like between Nathan, it's like you spend 3 hours talking about, well, Google Earth is off by 2 meters. And it's like, well, you know what? Yeah, so what?
Yeah, I wanted to get in on that show.
I'm sorry. We already had planned for the amount of people in there, and it just got.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Things happen, man. Dude, I'm on the other side of the planet.
But I got to tell you, I have not seen a honest flat earther yet, and I have not yet seen a flat earther that doesn't use
those words are an oxymoron. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
you had to see Steve in action. He had 5 lassos going at the same time for 30 seconds. Steve was like giving people walkie-talkies, like you say, okay, so done, instead of saying over, and that lasted for about 30 seconds.
It was worth a shot, though, right?
And it was just like,
it was fun, though. I got to admit,
but the first hour of that is something that should be referenced, because you basically heard all their arguments. But the problem that I saw with the FEs, outside of being pussies, they're not even all on the same page.
No, they actually do a lot of infighting in the flat Earth communities because they have different
things. Old mountains being tree fate.
Yeah, the man's island thing, and it's like, oh my god,
Island Man, yeah.
Oh, that's been so thoroughly debunked. It's ridiculous. It's just. I think a couple of them actually didn't realize that. So.
Plus the fact they're looking at Google Earth and they don't realize that when you're looking at it from this view, it's accurate, but when you go street level, is that how it works? You go street level, it's different, and it's like, oh god, the arguments were just It was just fun though, just watching them, self-destruct. And Chris, at the very end, he got caught in a lie. And when I tell people to join the GDC, and I warn them, I'm like, these guys, they have tremendous bullshit detectors. And, you either say, I made a mistake, I misspoke, I spoke in error, or they're going to bury you. It was great. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, well, Steve, you know the part where you're like, what's Snell's law? And then he said something to do with it's differentials or something. And I was just laughing at that notion. I think you mentioned something about linear differentials, and yeah, the whole thing was just a bit confusing. I don't know. Like he sounded confident, but he just didn't know what he was talking about.
Oh, General, before I forget, are you going to be on Dr. Richard Carey's show on the 14th?
Maybe. I hope so.
So I think the two of you would, just make a great combination going back and forth.
We kind of did actually on my Facebook. I don't know if
I don't Facebook or Twitter.
Okay. Yeah, I've been reading his on the historicity of Jesus, his 2014 book, which I think is the first to tackle the whole Jesus myth in an academic sense. And Carrier, though he has done the reading, I suspect some form of agenda, because when I look at his bibliography and on my Facebook, when I tagged his name, which then it turned out to be a little bit of a mini debate on my Facebook, I started to point out that the research notes that he's been providing, so he argues that the New Testament gives the impression that Jesus is a cosmic Christ, and this sort of perspective is no different to the Gnostic view of Jesus and many other mythical views of Jesus. So therefore, how could you argue for a literal physical human that's named Jesus? And the irony is that you have evangelical Christians who specialize in Second Temple literature, who very well know that to argue that Jesus is God, right? So that's a classic Christian belief, that Jesus is both God and man. You need to accommodate these cosmic Christ texts. So my question to Carrier is this like a knee-jerk reaction of yours this is something that you've come across and you're like, oh, look, this sounds like this would fit my model, rather than acknowledging the fact that for nearly 50 years, scholars have known about this, and it hasn't made them question his historicity. It's just an argument that the fact that these texts outside the Bible.
Well, let me ask you, do you want to come in on the 14th when we have Richard Carrier talk about the Jesus mythicism?
Yeah, I don't mind. That's the thing.
I've been working. I know what time it is for you.
I've been working
it's
recently,
2 o'clock
so I don't know if I'll be able to make it. But
what's 2 o'clock my time and your time?
It's currently like 10 to 5. What I can do is, if I can't make it, I can formulate some questions for you, and if you can send them.
It's 9 a.m. Well, I think it's like morning time for you, but okay. Yeah. But yeah, we were trying to find somebody to talk to him with, but unfortunately plans got changed, so we're gonna have to go a different route.
The thing is, what are you going to talk to him about? Like what?
Well, on the 14th, we're going to decide to. We're going to arrange something with S.J. Thomason or something. Her name is. She's a Christian apologist. In fact, she goes by Christian apologist on blogs, and they've been having a blog thing for a while. And he basically chose just to not even respond to her anymore. And for some
what's
reason,
the name?
S.J. Thomason or something. She's been on the Red Pill Religion channel often.
Okay.
She's a teacher of business or something, and I had kind of talked to him into like, you know what, why don't you just have a conversation where we could, let's see what happens, and then we'll talk about it on the 14th and then arrange it on the 28th for a podcast. So we don't really know what the conversation is going to be with. He's given some ideas. He's been very cordial. So on the 14th, we'll just have to like play it by ear, and people can come up with ideas. And I know a lot.
By the way, Steve, Steve, I have to give you a line of the day when Zod and Gret were going back and forth. You just said, I'm still laughing at it, that, hey, if I was a Calvinist, it wouldn't matter a damn anyway.
True though, right?
That's good. Absolutely true.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm going to become a Calvinist because that way I don't have to worry about any of this stuff.
That's right.
No matter what I do, right?
Matter of fact, isn't that your icon? Is that the outfit that you're wearing? Your icon, is that your moniker or whatever?
No, that's Custard. That's General Lee.
Well, when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, he's a Calvinist. I'm like, oh,
no, the Holy Spirit, just something she liked. She did a really awesome job on it, so I kept it. There was no overtones for it. It was just a really cool picture. So, all right, guys, let's bring this close. I know we're at 2 hours, so I appreciate you guys coming in. This was a good debate, good after show. I really enjoyed this after show a lot. We had a lot of good questions brought up, and I definitely want to thank all the supporters of the Great Debate community in my channel. There's been a huge outpouring of support, and I do appreciate it immensely. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go on in communities, and the people that have stuck around, and the people that want to see the Great Debate community thrive and be a part of that, and have helped towards that. I can't thank you guys enough. I think it's beneficial to all of us, and I think it's beneficial to all of our channels.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that to Hans, I've watched Hans on so many of these hangouts. I have a great respect for you. I really do. Thanks. And it's a channel like this that gives me the opportunity to speak to someone like you where I could never get to before. So,
in general, your channel has benefited from the Great Debate community, has it not?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So, I mean, the Great Debate community is set up so that people like the other channels, like the Geek Room and Beyond the Atheist Beyond the Trailer Park, and even TST or
I brought up Hans the other day when we were talking about Richard Garriott, and Hans wasn't even there, and that's only because I've seen him all the time on your channel, and that's where I gained my respect, just listening to him and just the way he handles himself. I have tremendous respect for him.
And I have a video coming out. I wrote a script, and hopefully I can get through it today or tomorrow about just a lot of the newer people that watch my channel, because it's very still a just weird feeling knowing there's a lot of people that listen that I don't know who they are. I don't interact with them because they're the kind of people that don't really go on the live chat. They don't go on the hangouts, but they listen. And I kind of want to get to know them. They leave a lot of comments on my videos. I mean, I get tons of comments on my videos, and I try to read every single one of them. I really do. And there's a lot of names. I mean, huge amount of names, hundreds and hundreds of names that I don't recognize. And so, I mean, I like to start getting to know those types of people. So I thought about making a video about that, and maybe I can get that out later on today.
Dave, would you consider yourself agnostic, atheist? Like, what's your position?
I actually, what do you call it? I was brought up a strict Roman Catholic. I attended seminary to become a Roman Catholic priest. I was all in. I did a stint at the Vatican for a while, and I left the faith when I saw things I wasn't supposed to see and heard things I wasn't supposed to hear. And that pretty much, did it for me.
We'll definitely have to have that conversation another time. I do got to wrap this up, guys. So let me finish this if I can get through this if I may, guys. By the way, I do want to announce again, if you guys are not familiar, Sean Mitchell from the Great Debate community has passed away. He had lost his leg due to infection, I believe, and due to complications from that.
Wait, who?
Sean Mitchell. He was a musician, and he did a lot of the hashtag bitchmade things back when I had to debate with Ronnie. He made a lot of very funny memes. People might remember him from that. So that's a sad thing.
Wow, that really sucks.
So I wanted to definitely make note of that. So okay, never mind. So if people haven't been notified of that, I want to make sure that they know now. And again, I just want to reiterate, I do want to appreciate very immensely all the outpouring of support that I've had, Dave and in general and other people in the community. We are going to thrive. We are going to be a very large community. We have a lot of things planned. Matter of fact, even today, in a couple hours here, I believe is when we interview Mark from Beverly Hills Lifestyle Magazine. He's actually just getting done doing a photo shoot with Lionel Richie. And we have a very exclusive interview with him. And so we are trying to involve a very, very affluent, popular people that can get some attention, not just for my channel, but for all the channels involved in the Great Debate community. When we go on air and we talk about a lot of things, of course, people are listening, and we like people to listen. I mean, it's enjoyable when you're having a conversation and people can interact, and we can ask people in real time things. It's not an easy thing to do. When you have to think on the fly in these conversations, it can be pretty difficult sometimes. And I know a lot of people just listen and they don't bother to jump in. And I'm hoping to maybe coax people into coming into the conversations more, and don't be afraid of it. And when we have dialogues like this, what we did with Gret shows that we can have types of dialogues and not have them visceral, and not have them to be denigrated into just insulting and things of that nature. And even the fact that we've had people from the Clown Car Posse come in and have conversations with Shannon indicate that it is possible. I mean, we've had Antonio Fletcher, who actually complimented the format. We've had G-Man, obviously. We've had Rand Campbell. I want to show that these dialogues can happen, and I want to show that we can elevate the dialogue to a higher level. And I'm hoping most people come along for the ride. So with that, I want to thank everybody again, especially the people that have been in here and the people that have been watching my channel for a very long time. And hopefully I'll get that video out later on tonight. And if you haven't watched the latest video that came out on the Non Sequitur show, go watch it. It's with Seth Andrews from The Thinking Atheist. And Kyle and I had a wonderful interview with him. He was one of the most nicest guests that I've ever had to deal with. Him and actually Pam Whistler from The American Atheist was a very pleasure to deal with as well. And she's going to have a debate with G-Man coming up. That could be interesting. So once again, thank you guys very much, and we'll bid you adieu.